expert, but I've definitely done it a few times.
Well, okay, maybe we'll get started. So thank you for joining us for the Fall Directors Meeting. We really appreciate your participation and attendance. Also, since I've had a chance to meet some of you, but not all of you, we just wanted to do maybe a brief introduction where, if you'll tell me your name, where you're currently working or where you're from, and maybe just on a personal note, your favorite Halloween costume that you wore or somebody in your family wore, or if you don't participate in Halloween, something that you saw a trick-or-treater in or something like that. And I'll start this off. So if I haven't had a chance to meet you, I'm Kyle Gowdy. I moved into the position that Nick vacated, and I'm super happy about it. It's been a huge learning curve. My experiences with JJS, so I've been with Juvenile Justice Services more than 29 years, and I've been an assistant program director in multiple facilities where there were school programming or where there was a school program. So I've had the pleasure of working with a few of you, and I appreciate that relationship and look forward to building same relationships with everybody else here and getting to know your programs. I'm trying to connect with everybody just for kind of a quick check-in. I appreciate those of you I've been able to check in with, and I'm still working to get everybody else on the calendar. So thank you for that. My favorite Halloween costume is I had a 6-year-old daughter who decided she wanted to be Tarzan. And so she got dressed up in a Tarzan costume and went to school and had all the muscles and everything, and she was super proud. So that was my favorite Halloween costume. I think I'll go with that. And then I'll hand it off to Amanda. Amanda, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, Amanda Charlesworth. I think most of you wonderful humans know me at this point, but I am the YIC program specialist at Usbe, working with the mentors. Favorite Halloween costume was probably the year, it was 2, because I have 2 boys. They were in 1st grade and 3rd grade, and their father and I convinced them to be scary. And they went into school and scared all of their classmates, and I had to go pick them up and take them home because the costumes were too much for the 1st grader. So they've never done scary since, but we always enjoy Halloween. So I will pass off to Miss Julia.
All right, I'm Julia Armstrong, and I work here with Kyle and Amanda at USBE. I'm an education specialist, and I think I've met most of you at this point, but there's still people I haven't met in a year, which is unfortunate, but that is what COVID, I think, has done to us here at USBE. Let's see, my favorite costume, I'm really a bad planner. And so I feel like every year I'm trying to talk my kids into just being zombies because I can just rip up some of their old clothes and put some white makeup on them and send them out the door. So I'm going to say a zombie is my favorite costume because it seems to be the most simple. So let's pass off to, how about you, Jason?
I'm Jason Rosewall, and I'm with YIC, which is in Grant School District. I don't really have a favorite costume I can remember. I have an interesting Halloween experience that kind of touches on that. So long time ago, I actually had to have some surgery on my brain. And when I had that, I had all these staples on the side of myself. And this happened to be around Halloween time. And so I was taking my kids trick-or-treating. And as I was taking them trick-or-treating to the house, people of course said they liked all of our costumes. My kids, I don't even remember what it was at the time, and then thought I was Frankenstein. So that was more of an interesting experience, but Halloween nonetheless.
Okay, so my order keeps switching every time somebody jumps in, but maybe we'll move to Andy. Andy, you're up.
All right, I'm Andy McKay from UNA School District in Vernal. Halloween, I've not really been a fan. I guess when I was a kid, it was just all about getting candy.
Of course. Okay, who has a phone number in here that ends in 4 420.
Did you say a phone number or just a number?
So it comes up as your person is number 8, and it starts with 804.
And
But-
that's Jerry.
That is Jerry,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
So hi. So what are you wanting?
Jerry, we're just doing a brief introduction. You, where you work, and if you had a favorite Halloween costume or experience.
So this is Jerry or Gerald Jackman. I'm at Box Elder School District, so we do all the YIC, and also I'm the principal of the alternative high school. So we're kind of like many of you small ones, we take everything's here. So and I don't really have a favorite costume. Halloween, we try to avoid having kids dress up here at the high school, so they get kind of racist to do that. So we try to avoid that, to be honest.
Of course. Okay. Thank you very much. How about Angie Sorensen?
I'm Angie Sorensen. I work up in Cash District with Cherie Hansen. I've been doing this for 25 years. Halloween, I don't know if it was my favorite, but probably my best costume. I worked in a chocolate store in the mall, so I dressed up like an Oompa Loompa.
That is awesome. Thank you. Arlene Anderson.
Hi, I'm Arlene Anderson from South San Pete School District, and my kids are all Polynesian. And so last year, my youngest, she was a senior, and she still liked to dress up, and she loves Chick-fil-A. So she had a friend that took a plastic container and then made a sign, and she was Polynesian sauce from Chick-fil-A, and I thought that was pretty clever.
That is really clever. Thank you. How about Karen Bedont? And say your name one time for me.
That you were right, it's Karen Bedont,
Okay.
and I'm with Carbon School District. So I had to sit and make a list because Halloween is like my favorite holiday ever.
Awesome.
I actually sew, and so I've made a Belle and Gaston, a fairy godmother, an Edna Mode, but my favorite right now is my Cruella de Vil. So forget the kids, I'll dress up.
Thank you for sharing that. Brian Duncan.
I'm Brian Duncan from Twilla School District, and I don't know if it's a favorite, but it was a fun one years ago when my wife and I lived in Nebraska. We went to a Halloween party where we both we had blue t-shirts similar to the color that I have on, and on one we just put the name Gene, Gene, and on the other we put the word the name Jean, Jean, and we went as a pair of blue jeans.
That's hilarious. Thank you. Okay, so I have somebody listed as Carol. Is that Carol Anderson?
Yep, that would be me.
Awesome.
I'm Carol Anderson. I'm the YIC director for Murray City School District. You see everybody's faces and some familiar faces on the Zoom call. I must be a Carbon County girl thing because Halloween is my favorite. I sew a costume every year. When I was at the USBE, my partner Jack used to tease me because I won the USBE costume contest 3 years in a row, and they stopped having it. So he said it's because I won every year. They stopped having it. It was no fun for anybody. I don't think that's the case. It was some other circumstances, but probably my favorite one was a Day of Muertes or Day of the Dead Victorian costume that I made out of an old wedding dress that I dyed.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you. How about, I hope I say this right. Is it Chauncey?
Chancey. Thank
Chancey. Sorry about that.
No,
And say your
it's
last
just
name
fine.
for me too.
That's okay. I have two, but my mom was an amazing costume maker, so all of my kid costumes were outstanding. My favorite though was three girlfriends and we dressed up as the characters from The Craft when we were in high school. And we walked into school that day and nobody knew who we were. They thought there were 4 new girls on that day of school. So that was pretty awesome for us.
Thank you for sharing that. Dan.
Hey, Dan Biolo. I'm the YIC director in Alpine School District, principal here at Summit High School. And, you know, I suppose my best or favorite Halloween story, or it's not my favorite costume necessarily, but when I was at Lone Peak, when I was the assistant principal, every year our admin team would think of a theme to dress up in, and one of the assistant principals was really big into Halloween. He's now an elementary principal, which he absolutely loves it because he's got a lot of dress up things. So he would get into it every year. And one year we decided on a military theme. Let's all dress up like military. So there were 5 of us administrators, and one of the assistants and I secretly said, "Hey, let's do this. We'll just get T-shirts made that are Star Wars or Star Trek Federation type," which is military, but it was real easy because we weren't as big into dressing up. So the other assistants and the principal went all out. They were dressed up in military camouflage, all this stuff, and we showed up in T-shirts with just this. It was military, but they were very disappointed in us, and we've been taking heat from that team. They will never let us live that down, that we skimped out on trying to be military and dress up in a theme and went the easy route and just got a T-shirt. So that's a fun little story from my days back then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I saw in the chat, Nikki, okay, she shared in the chat and she had to step away. Well, Amanda, what was in the chat? What does it say?
So Nikki Kimball is with Logan School District, and they don't currently have a YIC director at the moment. She's the support staff that's been working with the program for, oh gosh, I don't know how many years, but a number of years. And they're working on hiring a director and a mentor at the moment. And one of her favorite memories was her boys dressed up as Buzz Lightyear and Woody. And those were her favorite toys at the time, or their favorite toys at the time.
Well, welcome, Nikki. Thank you. David Green. All right. We might be missing him. How about Derek Winder? Okay, we'll try. Okay, this one says Hanson SP. I think we'll lose them, folks, maybe because they're.
Hanson SP is Cherie from Cash District, and she is in a meeting with a student and a parent right now.
Got it. Thank you for the heads up. Okay,
Yep.
how about Jerry?
Jerry's already gone, Kyle.
I've already gone.
Gosh,
I just
sorry,
changed.
it jumped.
I just got rid of the number. I didn't want it to look like I was a convict.
Sorry, Jerry. Right. Okay, so how about Jill Riddle Baker? All right. We'll try Carla Porter.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Carla Porter. I am with Weber School District. I'm a Student Services Director, and YIC falls in our department. I'm very jealous of all of you who sew because you make incredible costumes for your families, and I never could. So it had to be either with a glue gun and duct tape. So one year, the best costume ever was my son. I got a tablecloth with cardboard around him and glued plates and cups and candlesticks, and he went as a romantic dinner for two.
Super cute. Thank you. So Jill said, sorry, she doesn't have a camera or mic. She's secretary for Washington County. How about Lynn Meekum? Or say your last name, Lynn. Let me make sure I got that right.
You got it right, Lynn Meekum.
Got
Nebo School District, YIC Director, Principal at Landmark High School. Let's see, this is my 32nd year in education. I've been all over the district with many different jobs. This, of course, is my favorite. And Halloween, I think my favorite is just when the grandkids come knocking on Grandpa's door. It doesn't matter what they're wearing. They're so excited to come and show off their costume. So that's my favorite. And I have Ignacio Garcia, he's program specialist here. So I've got him here and I'm going to make him do his part too. So
that's awesome.
My favorite Halloween costume has got to be, I've got a pink bunny costume from the Christmas Story. So it seems to be a kind of a fan favorite. So I'm a little bit too big to wear it now, but my kids sure like it. So
that's awesome. I was going to ask you if it's big enough to fit me because that sounds just about right. Darn it. Okay. Michael Wiles.
Hi, I'm Mike Willis. I am.
Oh, Willis. Sorry, brother. Got it.
Common mistake. I never had a substitute ever get it right, so it happens. But I'm the YIC director here in Sevier. I'm also the assistant superintendent. And as far as Halloween, I think my favorite was Indiana Jones, but I had one of my sons went as a gummy mummy one year. We dressed him up as a mummy and then put gummy worms all through his costume. He was miserable, hated every second of it, and he still dislikes Halloween because all the kids pulled all the worms out of his costume and ate them throughout the day. So he won't even talk about it nowadays. So that was probably my favorite, just to watch what happened. So
appreciate that. Thank you. I just got a message from Rusty. He said that he is the Washington County YIC director. So we got that in the chat. How about Stacy Evans?
Yes, so I'm with Jordan School District and I'm over the Equity and Compliance Department, and YIC is one of our programs. And so as far as costumes go, I think my favorite Halloween costume has to be my twin grandsons. One year, their family dressed as Dr. Seuss characters, and they were Thing 1 and Thing 2 with the wigs and everything. And I couldn't believe 2-year-olds would keep the wigs on, but they did. They loved them.
Awesome. Stephen Solon.
I'm Steve Solon. I am at Pleasant Creek, which is the North San Pete School District's alternative and YIC program. And my favorite costume was actually when my son went to school as me. He put on a bald cap, filled his arms and legs with tattoos, and was grumpy all day. So he did a good job.
Thank you. How about Steve Schofield?
Oh, that was a good one. I'm in Iron County, YIC director and alternative and adult ed. My youngest son last year was Nacho Libre. Brilliant. It was awesome.
That is brilliant. I love it. Travis Cook.
Travis Cook, Provo City School District. You can, if you ever see me out in costume, it'll always be a penguin. It's always ever been a penguin. It will always be a penguin. It's the only costume I've ever donned. So just let's plan on it.
Travis, could I butt in, Kyle? Travis, weren't you a bum for a while there?
Yes, that was actually in my personal life. My
oh yeah,
that was my real life that we were. Okay. Yes, exactly.
Just checking, just setting the record straight.
Exactly, and just as an endorsement for Kyle and his new role.
Oh, thanks,
Kyle
Travis.
was the APD here at Slate Canyon, and was phenomenal to work with. Looking forward to working with him at the state level. So kudos, Kyle.
Thank you, Travis. I appreciate that. But what type of penguin, Travis? Do you know penguin types? It's my wife's favorite.
Oh, I don't. I wish I could say just the one with a big black outer with a white middle and a nice big orange beak and orange feet.
Sounds like an emperor, maybe. Yeah, gotcha. All right, Trevor Olson.
Trevor Olson, Student Services Director for San Juan School District. I think my favorite costume would be to throw on a favorite baseball jersey, because that's easy, but it's also a lot funner when you're throwing on a jersey that you have a team that's in the playoffs still. So it's not as fun when your team's lost out and gave away all of their players like my Cubs did this year. So
oh boy,
there's always next year. As a Cubs fan, that's what we say. There's always next year.
Always next year, right? Awesome. Thank you. Trina Valdez.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Trina Valdez. I'm the State Education Liaison with the Department of Human Services. I also love October and Halloween, and I love Day of the Dead. So those are always my go-to every year as a way to celebrate my culture and remember those who have passed on. So November 1st and 2nd, you'll usually find me in some sort of Day of the Dead makeup and costuming.
Thank you, Trina. And Wendy. I think it's
Greetings, everyone. Going last, you're all taking me down a memory lane, man. I can't. So I'm sitting here thinking, oh, what is my favorite? Because I've been on the planet for a while. But and Kyle, I'm so excited to see you and to have you in this position. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
As I have had interactions with you over the years.
Yeah. It's been so awesome because a lot of people I worked with are new in their current roles. So it's been a really fun transition. So thank you.
And I'm Salt Lake City School District. And so I haven't participated in my favorite holiday, Halloween, for several years, just for life circumstances. But since I've been thinking, I think I got invited to this themed wedding in Washington. So we traveled to this friend's wedding and everybody had to come to this wedding as their favorite character from the Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
So and I've got a lot of vintage clothing that I've collected over the years. So I can always get into my stockpile to wear a costume. And I got this really long blonde wig and elf ears. So I really enjoyed being an elf. So since I went to that wedding, I've had some variations on that, and it's kind of been my go-to theme over the last couple of years, but that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
So anybody I missed? We've got 30 participants currently, and there's a chance somebody jumped into the list that we may not have gotten to.
We haven't heard from Heidi.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Heidi was at the top. Heidi.
I thought I was going to get away from it, but
no, sorry. Dang, thank you, Julia. Good.
My name is Heidi Pitkin. I'm support staff here at USBE for YIC. And I was thinking about Halloween, and my mom was creative as well in costumes. So I actually have 3 of them. She dressed, when I was a baby, she dressed both of us up as marshmallows, and I was Minnie Marshmallow and she was the big fat campfire marshmallows. And then in high school, I had a best friend that was an artist. So she painted our faces with spider webs and a spider. So one of our eyes actually was the eye of the spider. And so we were known as spider twins. And then my nephew, when he was in high school, dressed up in pure black clothes and pinned Barbie dolls all over him and put Chick Magna on the front of him. So that was the 3 costumes I liked the most. So
very fun. Thank you. And thank you for everyone sharing with us. So anybody else we may have missed? Okay. We'll move forward in the agenda. If you could move us 1 page forward. All right, so we did our welcome and introductions, and we wanted to give you some news and updates. So I'll hand over the common assessment piece, and we'll start there.
All right, before maybe we jump into common assessment. No, that's fine, Kyle. And maybe it's okay. We wanted to just remind you who your team is at USBE with these photos of us. Unfortunately, Murray's not able to be here today. But Kyle, why don't you share with us what your role is, because you will be taking a piece of Murray's position.
So thank you, and thank you for the pictures. And so maybe we'll just start with roles and responsibilities a little bit, but I'll get to me in a second. So you know Leah Voorhees. She's the USBE Assistant Superintendent of Student Support, but also because our supervisor, that position is open. She's currently our acting supervisor as well. So if you have questions for us or for her, that would be the person to respond to. What Julia was referring to was kind of the structure. And so Murray is next. And Murray, if you haven't heard too, was announced he's going to retire in January. And with that, I've had the pleasure to become the N&D grant coordinator, director. I'm not sure exactly what the title is, but so I'll be over the N&D grant. And as of yesterday, I got trained in Utah grants, and we went through the 5 applications that we had in there. So if you had an application in there, we went through the approval process yesterday. We didn't send anything back for revision. And so, but I'll holler at me if you have questions about that. That's in the approval process. So then, Murray, he was over N&D, and then also he is still working on the civil rights component, and he's also still coaching me through the N&D stuff. So don't feel like if you have questions there to call he or I. Probably if you call me, I'm going to call him on the N&D stuff for a little bit anyway. You saw Heidi introduced herself. She's our executive secretary. You see me right there, educational specialist, and then Julia. We've already introduced ourselves, but Julia is also education specialist, and Amanda is the YIC program specialist, and Trina is the DHS state education liaison. And if anybody has questions, kind of how those connections work, or really anything, I mean, please feel free to put them in the chat or just chime in.
What's pretty exciting is that we do have some restructuring happening at USBE, like Kyle suggested. And so we will have our own, before you might have known Cheryl or Holly Bell, Jordan, Hun, they were all on our team as well, but they will be moving to other teams, and our team will be solely youth in custody. So we're excited about those changes. Okay, Amanda, I think we can move on from looking at our faces.
So this is everybody on our team currently. Everybody, we youth and custody directors, USBE staff, anybody we're connected to. So this is our whole group right here.
So, and we appreciate you taking the time to introduce yourselves today. I think there's enough new folks that it's nice for us to see who you all are. Anyway, it's nice for me. So. All right, so the next slide, Amanda, is just that news and updates like Kyle had alluded to. And so why don't we let Trina, you start with your couple points there.
Okay. So Julia had sent out an email a few weeks ago with a link to a Google Excel sheet to enter your local interagency council dates, times, locations. So just a handful of you have put that information in. I know that it's early in the year and maybe you haven't scheduled them all out, but please, as you schedule those, enter those into the Google Sheet so that we all have the information. And if you do calendar invites, it's really nice for you to add me, Kyle, and Julia to those invites as well. And then also, I manage the Educating Youth in State Care webpage. I will put that link here in the chat. If you could go ahead and take a look at that and make sure that your information is correct, or if I have the wrong person listed, or if you have a mobile number, that helps us stay connected and make sure that the information is current and updated. So I encourage you just to take a look at that webpage and make sure that your information is correct. So that's all I had for those 2 points. So, and thank you for those that have already put your information into the Google Sheet. I really appreciate it.
And Kyle, do you want to speak to the administrator cohorts before we move on to common assessment, just because there's a slide with that? And you're on mute still.
Got it. Okay. So you may or may not have heard a little bit about the work that Break Free is doing. And as I've been reaching out to the individual YIC directors, I've heard a lot about looking for opportunities where we could meet with the people who do similar jobs to bounce ideas off each other, to get support, to problem solve. And Break Free has indicated that they could help us create some of these administrative cohorts, groups that are people with similar functions, and work through some of these problems and have kind of a support group in that area. And I'm gonna have a meeting with David, who's with Break Free, later on in this week, and I'll have more information about that then. But as for right now, that's something we're working on, and I just wanted to get it on your radar, and we'll reach out to you and connect you to the people you would be in the group with once we get that in place.
I guess I'd like to know if you have any feedback regarding that, or if there's anything that you would want us to make sure that we were addressing as we look at this idea of cohorts.
I'm assuming that we still have a contractual relationship with Break Free the way we have historically, so that's still in place. And so this is one of the services they would be offering, the state. And I'm guessing they're going to just do that virtually.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. No, they're very good at this, have done it nationally, so that would be a great way to go.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with Break Free, they're also known as, or they were formerly known as CEEAS, which I have no idea what that stands for. And the reason, which is, I think, a reason why they are now called Break Free. It's a little bit easier to remember. Amanda, would you throw in the link to Break Free? That way, if you want to go in and see a little bit more about what they offer, that would be great. Since we're kind of plugging Break Free as well, as they provide all sorts of resources for students. If you haven't looked into it, I would encourage you to go to that link and look into it. There's lots of contests, and thank you, Travis. All sorts of contests and things along those lines, book clubs. They send out free books to your students. The best thing to do is make sure that they have the contact information for your teachers to keep your teachers in the loop of all of those options for them. Okay, great. All right, our next slide is regarding common assessment. So I don't know if you're tired of me sending emails out about common assessment or talking to you about the common assessment, but we were able to create a 5-year contract. Amanda, if you want to jump to the next slide just so that they can see, I'm giving her too many tasks, I think. Oh, maybe you did and I just can't see it. So the common assessment, we are really encouraging you to use the common assessment. The website I've linked in your agenda that I sent out a couple of days ago. If you don't have that, it's also been in emails from me. But we are encouraging you to use those, especially for those kids that are in residential programs, secure care, RTCs, along those lines. It doesn't necessarily make sense for your Check and Connect youth. But you are welcome to use it for them if you would like to, if that makes sense for you. You all have login information. If you haven't logged in before, it would be the first letter of your name and then your last name with the password. It's capital P, word password 21. And that's all been in emails too. So I don't want to reiterate anything too much on that. However, I guess I wanted to just get some feedback from you regarding any training that is needed. I have linked the website training resources for you. So if you're running into problems getting classes set up and getting your schools identified, there's lots of training resources available. But our folks at Renaissance are offering to do any specific training for our Utah folks. So if there's areas that you're struggling in or things that have been complicated this year as you've tried to use the common assessment, I would like to know what that is so that we can create a training specific for you. If there's anything off the top of your head right now, feel free to unmute yourselves and chat or throw it in the chat. Otherwise, I will maybe try to send out an email for feedback.
Julie, or is there a specific number of licenses per district, or how is that structured?
So we have, we're able to do up to 26 programs. And so we currently have 26 schools we're serving. I know a lot of you don't have treatment programs, and so it might not make sense for you, but we can do up to 26. And we have an up to, I don't know how many number of students, but I think it's something along the lines of 2,000 students we can serve through Common Assessment. However, we never meet that. So, so we have plenty of space for that, Brian.
So we could consider Tooele as one program.
So yeah, you would consider the way that we've had to design it in Utah, because you're all, we see each of your LEAs essentially as a separate school. And then you can set it up however you need to. What I would do is maybe in your situation, Brian, is just do Logan School District, or sorry, Tooele School District, because you don't have necessarily, I don't think you would need to set up multiple schools. You would just do it under you, Brian, and then just have put in whatever students would be associated.
That sounds great.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yep, totally.
I know some of you have other schools, like Travis has multiple schools that he's put in there, but he's been able to figure out how to make that work. And there is specific instructions on the website to show you how to set that up. But if we want to invite our Renaissance people to a webinar, have them come on and just do a Q&A and walk through some of those things with you, that's something we'd like to set up for you.
Julia, in the chat, Karen asked if you could do a quick overview. She's been away from YIC and come back, so she's not familiar.
Okay, so Amanda, is there a way that you could just click on that link and take us to? Well, and do you have a login to the Common Assessment? No, okay, maybe let me share my screen if that is okay. Now you're going to see what's on my screen. Let's. All right. Oh, I got to move everything now. Hang on, sorry. Okay, so this is the login for the Common Assessment. What the Common Assessment is, and this is something that I am learning as I go, but this is an opportunity for you to plug in students to do reading assessments, math assessments, pre and post assessments for those areas, just like you would. I know a lot of LEAs use various assessments, and correct me if I'm wrong. Those of you that have used this program, please chime in if you have additional. I don't have really boots on the ground working with this assessment experience, but this is part of our curriculum and our board rule is that we are providing pre and post assessments for our students so that we can track the data regarding their progress in schools to make sure that what we're doing in our programs is working. And so this is an assessment that we are using, calling it our Common Assessment, so that we're all using the same one to keep things a little bit more consistent across the state. And so what you would do, and again, I am not as familiar with this, so I apologize, which is why I'm going to have Renaissance come and do training because they know their program. But there is STAR reading, there's early literacy, math, and then there's some custom stuff that you can do. And these are just those assessments that you would do pre and post. If you click on, let's see. And now I can't remember. I played with this a while ago so that I would be prepared today, and now it's kind of fleeting, but there is something that you can click on. Oh, help. If you click on help. This is a ton of the trainings. So if just to log in, there's a training on how to log in. There's trainings on setting up Renaissance for your district, so you can go through that to set that up. There are video trainings on how to upload last year's data to this year. So if you go to help, there's just a myriad of training videos for school year setup. You can go through those, and those are pretty quick videos to go through just to give you some ideas. But it is just that resource for you to do pre and post testing for your students. And you can do them every 45 days, every 30 days. You can do them as they come into your program, when they leave your program. There's a lot of flexibility with the frequency of that.
This is Carolyn Marie. Just a question for you, because we haven't really relied on this in the past. So if I'm receiving this correctly, and I'm going to pick up because he's right there and I can see him. So I received a student from Slate Canyon. Slate Canyon would have given him the post. Then I get him the next day. I'm doing another pre. And then they maybe are with me another 30 days. As we all know, we share a lot of the students back and forth. So I'm giving them another post. Then unfortunately, maybe they're going back into secure care. Then they're going back into secure care, getting another pre and post. I mean, they could end up maybe taking this test 6 to 8 times a year. Is that data needed by the state? Are you encouraging we really do this? Because my other point to the question is, I don't have a lot of say in what classes the young men are placed in. We're placed right at Murray High School, and it really comes down to their credits that they need for graduation or their IEP status. So I'm just trying to figure out where this would fit into the program.
Yeah, and so I think that you bring up a couple of good points. One, and Travis, maybe you could speak to this, but one of the things that's just coming to my mind is part of, if we're all using the same common assessment, I would hope that we can link students from one program to the next program, and so that we avoid making them do these tests over and over. The other thing that I'm thinking of, Carol, is that's why this isn't necessarily a great option for our kiddos that are in mainstream schooling. So in your program, because you don't have a self-contained classroom or a program, it might not make sense, but it might, Carol, you might want to have them come in and do this, and it could help guide their classes that you're enrolling them in, or seeing what kind of extra support you could provide to them outside of their, just, I guess, to prepare them to get into the right classes. Travis, did you want to speak? You looked like you were ready to say.
Yeah, so the overarching obligation is that for the federal funding, the Title I Part D funding, we need to pre and post for every eligible student. And so that kind of drives the initial objective. The secondary objective is to have some metric, even though it'll take us a while to kind of weed through what the value of this metric will be for students in short-term settings. Now, understand that the validity of testing students within a 30-day cycle is not going to be ideal, although Renaissance does say that I think they're somewhere in that 30 to 45-day range they're comfortable with the validity on just kind of that incremental progression. So it is a little bit of a hoop jump obligation, but it's also kind of a safeguard for the work we're trying to do, especially when the traditional metrics that are used in public education are not available to us, right? Especially 160 days, full academic year, the traditional end of year assessments become even more problematic than what this will be. So we give it to every long-term student. We don't currently assess detention students, but any student that will be with us or committed to secure care at the hospital or in any of the residential treatment providers that we work with here, all get a pre and post. And we don't worry so much about that time window right now. That'll all be kind of, vetted as we go through this formally. I'm just thrilled that we have a 5-year contract. So the fact that this is going to be available and we're going to get some data over the next 3 to 5 years that we can at least mine is really helpful. As you can imagine, the difficulty of having it for a year and then having it go away and then still feeling the need or the obligation from a Title I perspective and not having anything was a dilemma. But COVID will mitigate that. So we should be good.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. If we're using it too, we have a 5-year contract currently, but if it's working for us, then then we'll have the information to show that we need to continue that agreement, and then hopefully it'll be a good resource for us throughout the years. So thank you, Travis, for all of that. Again, I am still learning Common Assessment, but we will do what we can to create a webinar to answer some of these questions or see where it can be helpful. Carol, did you have another question?
So just, I want to make sure I'm clarifying. So what I'm hearing is, yes, even if they've just got it coming out of secure care, go ahead and give it to them when they're entering our school, correct?
I would probably, that would be the default right now, only because there is, if, for example, if Murray has no Renaissance data and all the other LEAs have Renaissance data, it's just going to be helpful. What will come out of, again, this was an obligation that Nick had. Back in the day, we used the RAT4, and then we transitioned from the RAT4 to a myriad of options for Title I Part D. And this was just the state solution to meet, kind of check the box they need to check. But I do think if you get in the habit of just at least pre and post testing the students while you have them for the 90 days or so, Carol, at least you'll have the ability to say, yes, that's an obligation that's being met. And then they'll have to deal with what the data actually shows down the road.
Okay, cool. I can do this for pre, but we have a lot of runners, so post could be interesting, but I'll start doing it. Thank you for all that clarification.
Yep. There is a contact on that slide, and we will send these slides out to you so you have them. Amalia is a really great resource. She's helped me navigate some challenges that we've faced this year, mostly user error, and she's a really good resource. I think oftentimes you'll go into the website and it'll direct you to, it would have directed you to Nick. Now it'll direct you to me. And I'm suggesting that I will get better equipped with Common Assessment, but Amalia would be it would probably be better go-to than I am regarding just kind of the technical side of things. All right, Amanda, I'll let you reshare your screen. What other questions and I do specifically have the question, can youth travel from school to school within the Common Assessment so that you have some data regarding them? Is there anything else that you would want me to make sure that a run through of the program specifically would be great. Anything else that would be helpful to you to receive some kind of training or help on for the Common Assessment?
Julia, is this for all of our kiddos? Is it DCFS and JJS?
It's up to, I'm gonna say it's JJS primarily. I don't know that it really fits the check and connect model. Steve, Travis, those of you that are using it, do you have another suggestion? I think most of those YIC, well, it would be DCFS if they're in a residential treatment program. So it's any RTC, any secure care facility.
And maybe just for additional context. So the legislature, as they reviewed this line item, wanted performance measures applied. As you can imagine, performance measures for the mobility of this population is very complicated. And so this is one option that was pursued and put in place. So in the same conversation that Carol and I just had back and forth, this idea that for any student that would not be able to benefit we wouldn't be able to demonstrate performance using the traditional measures, this is the measure that we would be using.
Thanks, Travis.
And then Julia, one more comment in the chat. So will there be a training? Is that what we're going to put together for the teachers?
Yeah, I think what I would do is I would just create a curriculum with our Renaissance folks. His name is David. And then we would invite, I would reach out to you all as directors, and then you would be able to provide it to whomever makes sense to attend that. So teachers, you, whoever you feel is the best in your various districts. Okay, all right. I think just making sure I'm getting all those chats. Thanks, Amanda, for managing that. What is next on our agenda? I think it is back to you, Kyle.
I think it's strategic plan. So I know there've been a lot of questions about the strategic plan, and lots of people have voiced some concerns. And what I wanted to share with you is, and we'll go through the goals in just a second. I had the pleasure of going through a similar process with JJS. Lots of it is about enhancing what we're currently doing to have a better outcome. So I don't think you'll see a lot of things in here where you'll be concerned over. I'm sure there will be some questions about delivery and how exactly we're going to get to these points, but also know that this plan hasn't been finalized. And we have a meeting with ANLAR on October 26th, I believe, to finalize it. So no, some of this could change a little bit. I don't suspect like a vision statement or even these goals will change in the process of that, but this is kind of a high level, just a check-in with you so you have some updated information on it. And then we will get you out more detailed information once this gets finalized and published. So I'll just start with the strategic plan. It's just the USBE YIC team facilitates equitable access to quality educational opportunities for youth in custody and care to grow academically, socially, and emotionally towards future success. I think everybody's in line with that. So, and if you have questions, pop them in the chat or just jump on. Be happy to take them. Next screen. So our strategy for implementation is, in order to implement these goals and realize their vision statement, the USB YIC team, so that's us and everybody on this call, will strategically and systematically work through measurable and specific strategies and action steps. So there are action steps listed within the goals. There are strategies listed within the goals. Those are still under review. But in the next few slides, I'm just going to give you some information about how we might move forward with each one of these. So next slide. And now we're jumping into the goals. Okay, so goal number 1. The USB will support YIC teachers and staff by continuing to create professional learning opportunities and provide technical assistance to strengthen their knowledge base, skills, and access to resources and provide quality education to their students. So possible strategies for this are, let's see what this is. What'd you say, Ed? We turn this into our district each year. Can we just use that? Are you talking about the strategic plan, Ed? Or is that something else? Okay.
I think Ed is referring to his own. So Ed, right, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but Ed has an annual strategic plan that he works on within his LEA.
Okay.
And so this, yeah, you could, if you wanted to provide USBE's YIC strategic plan as part of your individual LEA, you're welcome to give them that information as well. So this strategic plan is USBE's strategic plan, not necessarily specific to each of your LEAs, but more so how USBE will support you.
Oh, okay. I thought we were just doing a plan for each of our districts, and I've already got one. We create one. So that's why I was wondering, can I just use ours? But if I'm just adding on to yours, then I'll just add on to yours what I need to.
Yeah, well, we still encourage you to create your own strategic plan for how you are doing business in your various LEAs, because it's going to look very different throughout the state. This is just, so this would be our strategic plan, just like you have your individual LEA strategic plans, but hopefully they can coincide and support each other. So okay. If you want to take anything from our strategic plan and add it to your strategic plan, you're more than welcome to do that. Okay. But I would still encourage you to have your own.
That helps me. Anything that makes it easier for me.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Okay, so possible strategies for goal 1 are creation of a resource list identifying professional learning opportunities. And that would be something we would share out with everybody so you can see where and when learning opportunities are. Determine avenues to connect, build relationships, and cross-train YIC programs. We will be trying to connect people in a more efficient way, cross-train and help everybody understand the system. And then just say along the same line, just statewide training opportunities. So trying to provide training opportunities for your team so that they can enhance their skills. Okay. All right, the second goal USB YIC staff will establish procedures, policy, and expectations regarding check and connect mentor practices to ensure implementation with Fidelity. So, you know, lots of you have participated in check and connect mentor training, or you have a check and connect mentor at your site. Our possible strategies here are to add additional check and connect mentor trainings and YIC webinars, and to establish a formal check and connect mentor policy and procedure. So we will be working on that. We'll share that information out. Thank you. Our third goal, the USB will provide a simple and equitable process for LEAs to apply for and receive YIC funding. So a couple possible strategies here are provide technical assistance related to multiple sources of funding that can be used in support of student YIC programs. And we're also working to establish a fiscal work group so we can take a look at those things and see how we can simplify ways to apply for YIC funding. And one of the things that's being bounced around right now is additional use of Utah grants. We're looking into that, and we'll keep you up to speed on that. Goal number 4, USB will develop a robust team of staff who work together to meet the needs of YIC staff, resulting in increased ownership, collaboration, and support of YIC student access. Possible strategies in this area are identify already existing collaborative work with other USB teams and colleagues. So we'll be working to build stronger relationships. Meet with the USB data and statistics section to identify what additional resources are needed to make programmatic decisions. So we're making data-driven decisions. And then also, I mean, I think evidence of this is the people who are in the youth in custody positions right now, with myself and Julia, who have expertise in JJS and in DCFS, and trying to round out that team. So USB is looking at people who are connected in, you know, to specific things to build that robust and collaborative relationship. Number 5, this is our last one. So if you have questions after this, please feel free to ask. Identify the relevance and applicability of the rule and code to the current needs of youth in custody and make any necessary changes. So strategies in this are identify elements of rule and code that may need to be adjusted. And we're constantly having those type of discussions. Identify whether definitions and wording need to be changed to clarify, expand, or set boundaries and limits to authority. And then also identify and implement a process for YIC LEA fiscal procedures. And we talked about a slide or two before, creating a fiscal group so we could look at that. All right, so this is a really watered down version of this. We will share more with you, but I just wanted to make sure that you had kind of a basis for it and understand that, again, that these are enhancements. These are things we are working to build stronger relationships and better training and better outcomes for the students. And what questions can I answer if anybody has any? And it'll be around October 26th that hopefully the final copy will be completed and we'll get it out. My guess is a little bit after that because we'll probably have some feedback added to it and then we'll send it all out. Wow, you're letting me off easy. Okay, thank you very much. Any of you have questions still, feel free to put them in the chat.
Yes, and as we roll it out, if you have questions or suggestions, we're happy to take any feedback we possibly can. And as we take that strategic plan and break it up into exactly how we're going to accomplish those goals, you can probably expect to hear from us as we continue to do that, because it really is about us serving you and making sure that you have what you need. So we need your input and all of that. So speaking of strategic plans, not really. The next piece of our agenda is specific to supplemental funding. In the agenda that I sent out to you on Monday, I linked a YouTube video. It's from last year's presentation on supplemental funding that Nick put together, or that Nick presented, and he actually went through page by page of the supplemental application to help walk through that with you. If you need that much information, I would encourage you to go to that YouTube video. And then I also linked where he starts talking about it, so you don't have to watch the whole director's meeting from last year, because who wants to do that? It's a long meeting. So you're welcome to go back to that. I'm just going to give you some highlights of our process this year for supplemental applications, and in addition to that, the carryover spend plan, what we're asking regarding that. So hopefully this is helpful to you. But I understand that many of you are new to this process, and I am a very visual person. My team has come to understand that this year, or in the last few weeks as we've prepared these slides for you, that I do like visuals. And so I created this visual to help you understand how YIC, our timeline essentially for funding, has worked in the last couple of years. As you know, as part of our strategic plan, we are trying to simplify that process even more. But this year, we're still going to follow this process. So in the spring, after legislative session in the spring of last year, you all completed part 1 and part 2 of the YIC application for funding. And then in, actually, I think just this month, you will all receive your first allocation, and that is half of the money that you requested at that point. And so that should be your first allocation, and whoever does the finances things makes that happen so that all of your LEAs receive that money. So now we're to the point that we need a couple of things from you. And I'll skip that really quickly. I'm going to come back to that in our next slide, but we will do supplemental allocations. And then once that application is complete and we've made awards, we will do the second allocation. And that should happen in the winter, probably December, early January. And then it starts over again. So just if this visual is helpful for you, it's helpful for me to understand how that process works. And especially since Nick left, that has put me in this position to take over the budget, which I'm happy to do. I just needed to make it a little bit more visual. So our next slide is going to break down our current carryover spend plan, supplemental information, supplemental application instructions. So this is going to be 2 parts. Part A is something that I need from all of you. So whether or not you need any extra YIC funds or not, I need part A from you from this application. And that is your carryover declaration and spend plan from fiscal year 21. So a couple reasons why this is important. One, this is important because we don't get those carryover spreadsheets and money from our financial folks until December, January. It's always kind of up in the air when we're actually going to receive that. If we get this carryover declaration, you are self-reporting what your carryover is as soon as you receive the application and turn it into us so that we can see what money is available for supplemental moving forward, so we can get that allocated to you sooner than later. So that's number one. So the time frame is really important to that. The second piece of this is it is part of meeting it's meeting a requirement by our state auditors, making sure that we have carryover plans for each LEA. And so this is in response to ensuring that we have those from you. So we need these carryover declaration and spend plans from each of you. So if you could do that, that would be great. And I'll give you the timelines of when this will be available to you here shortly. Part B of the application is if you need any other supplemental funding. So for example, if you have a program, JJ is opening a program that you didn't account for in your application in the spring that has now popped up and you need money to help support that program, this is where you would ask for that money. If there's areas of need as far as creating a more positive culture and school environment for youth, you can ask for that money. If you have technology needs that didn't come up in your spring application, this would meet that need. So within the application, there's a list provided to you of how you can use supplemental funding and what would be appropriate to use supplemental funding on. So you'll have the instructions to completing the supplemental application, and then there is a narrative space for you to go in and write how these funds are going to help your program. So we do ask you to fill that out and then create the budget summary from there. Again, Nick had a pretty in-depth presentation he did last year. I don't want to waste your time today going over that for those that have done this multiple times, but those of you that need that, I would encourage you to go and watch that. But I am happy to answer any questions specific to this application right now.
Julia, can you remind us which email the link to the video was in of Nick doing the step-by-step?
Oh, yes. So it's on the agenda. So I sent out everybody an agenda on Monday, and then it's just linked in the agenda. So if you just click on that link, it should show up.
Thank you.
So Julia, just a couple quick things. So last year you produced a maximum allowable carryover document at the state level based on the allocations that you had made in the year previous. Is that something you're going to do this year? The reason I asked that is it basically alerts an LEA to the dollar number that is theirs under board rule, and then anything that would be above and beyond that maximum allowable carryover would be part of a spend plan, or in some cases part of a supplemental request. Does that
I think that's like what part A is. Is that not right? So that slide here in part A would be that that form that was in there, or is there something additional that Nick did that I'm not aware of?
So Nick basically took all of the prior year's fiscal awards in total by LEA, then used a 10% formula to determine and basically tell the LEAs, as far as the board is concerned, this is the maximum amount you're allowed to carry over from year to year.
Okay. So in this slide, if you see where it says maximum allowable carryover, I just want to make sure I understand, Travis. This is helpful for me.
Yep.
So that would be, so it'd be your total amount of money that you received in fiscal year 21 times the 10%, and that would be your maximum amount.
Exactly. And so by rule, it based the intent of the carryover allowance, and most budgetary line items don't have a cap. We happen to have a cap for interesting reasons, right? But adult ed has a cap. We have a cap. There are a few line items that have a cap, but anything under that cap, for example, would be the LEA would be allowed to carry over by administrative rule, right? Anything that's above and beyond that they would want to make an argument for in this spend plan, right? Is part of the supplemental conversation that allows you to know exactly what money you have available for other projects or initiatives, or anything you need to backfill. So
okay,
I can send you the document that he sent out last year that was really kind of helpful, because then as LEA directors, if you don't have really good working relationships with your business administrator, you're able to take that document and say, with the rule in hand and with that document, say, this is the number that we are allowed to carry over by administrative rule, right?
Right.
What if anything did we carry over from last year that is above and beyond this number? And at that point, they can go through the process of making sure this is clean as possible.
So yeah, Travis, if you could send that to me, that would be really helpful. And then that might change some time frames just because of my availability this week to get it all done. But based on whatever you provide to me, I will keep everybody informed.
I have a question, Julia, and Travis too. I just want clarification. So if we have carryover under or up to the 10%, we don't have to send a spend plan. It's over and above that we have to send us. And that amount would be taken out of our funding for this year, or it would be considered part of our funding for this year. Is that correct?
Right. So up to that 10% would be considered your spending. Anything over that, yes.
Okay. I just wanted clarification on that. That's how it's usually been, but I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah. And nothing should really change from now until, at least for this fiscal year, it should be just about the same. But as you see some gaps, maybe that I don't understand, because maybe I wasn't part of the process with Nick, please feel free to provide me any feedback as we go, because I'd like to make sure that happens.
Right. Also me as well. Travis,
sorry.
to that
Kyle.
document. Yep. Maybe I can help out with that, Julia. We can take a look at it together.
Yes.
Yeah. Proceed.
And when I say I really mean we, because this funding piece
Right.
is something our team is taking on as a whole. Yeah.
And the historical context here is because of how dynamic the vendor relationships are in any individual LEA. If Provo School District was going to have a new RTC pop up in this school year, and we were front loaded for that effort, right? But lo and behold, Dan Viola can speak to this. Lo and behold, after a year and a half, that relationship has never been finalized, and there's no students in that setting, so there's no service being provided. In those instances, you know, he or I may be sitting on $100,000 that was allocated to us for a very specific purpose that was never realized, right? So that would give us an opportunity to come back and go, oh, these funds were allocated, but as you know, this implementation didn't take place. Therefore, this is money that I'm returning for the state. That's the fluidity of this kind of line item. That's why it's one of the main reasons it exists. Or if Kyle or if JGS decides to open a wing or close a wing, or, you know, all of these things take time and happen pretty, they seem arbitrary in terms of their actual implementation date. That's the purpose of this kind of window.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. And it seems like maybe the link in the agenda that I sent isn't working, and I'm wondering if it's because I created a Google Doc. So I'm sure, Amanda, it's probably in the Word document, the Word version of it in our network. So if you want to see if that's there, that would be helpful. If not, I'll get that corrected and updated. We'll get you that link to next presentation. So do you want to progress the slide for me, Amanda? So this is our timeframes currently. We are still working to finalize that application for you. There's just been a few changes that our administration has wanted to see. One being that specific distinction between Part A and Part B of the application, whereas before it was kind of just one big with the carryover and the supplemental piece. We want to make sure that you understand that we need the supplemental piece. I'm sorry, the carryover piece from everyone, and Part B would be optional. But we do encourage you to use that funding. Just historically, it seems from speaking with Nick that we've had about $600,000 to work with to provide supplemental funding. Last year, we had significantly more than that. I think probably very related to COVID and a lot of things that you normally do, like bring in extra teachers and extra programs that you weren't able to do because of COVID. And so there was some extra funding that we were able to take back and then disperse appropriately. So so just so you know, a rough idea of what our budget looks like for that supplemental funding. But hopefully we'll have that application out to you by October 8th. If Nick provided you additional information along with that supplemental application that I just wasn't aware of that Travis is going to send to me, that might take a little bit extra time. But I hope by Friday that you all at least have a blank version of that application. And if there's any changes I need to make for you specific to your LEA, I will do that next week, or we will do that. Kyle and Amanda aren't off the hook. Applications will be due 3 weeks following. So we're looking at an October 29th deadline. I hope 3 weeks is enough time for you. If it's not, please let us know and we can work through that. You can turn it in any time between now or between the 8th and October 29th. You don't have to wait till the 29th to get it to us. But if you do need some extra time, just let us know and we can be flexible with that. We are, however, because we do consider this a competitive supplemental grant or application, because we do have a max number of money that we can provide to you, there will be a committee that will review those and approve those before we send awards out. And that committee consists of our team, as well as Trina and a financial monitor, right? And I'll introduce you to him a little bit later. His name's Clint Hoke. And so that's who will be reviewing those and then getting those awards out to you by hopefully November, so that we can get that second allocation out to you by December. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding any of that?
Steve Schofield had requested the addition of the airing of grievances and feats of strength into the supplemental process this year. Was
Okay.
is that being considered still formally?
Airing of grievances.
It's no longer on the table.
Okay, okay.
Thanks, Kyle, for clarity. Thanks.
Yes.
I don't know. You can send those to us anyway. We'll take everything. I just don't know if we'll put it in the grant application.
Just to plug for all LEAs as you work with your BAs, the point of the rainy day funding is that you have the ability to carry it over from year to year, right? So in essence, the first in, first out approach, if $1 million is the number and you're eligible to carry over $100,000, it's advantageous both to the LEA and to the SEA to carry that money over and declare that annually. Now, granted, in the subsequent year, you will be spending that $100,000 and carrying over money from your current year, right? And there's really good reasons to do that. So ideally, at some point, the board should be fairly confident that the amount of money that you're eligible to carry over is being carried over, and you're declaring and obligating the rest through this process. What becomes very problematic are surprises, which is, the usual number is 100,000, but we're returning $450,000 this year because of whatever reason, right? So just a plug to work with your BA so you know exactly what those numbers are on any given year, especially now that we are all obligated to use the unrestricted indirect cost rate. There's a lot of sway in what we used to historically do and what we're able to do now.
Any other tips or tricks from any of you that have been doing this for a while? I appreciate it, Travis. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. You'll be hearing from us in the next little while. All right, I think maybe it is time to do a stand and stretch, quick break. We've been at this for an hour and 20 minutes. I know that I need a quick break. So if it's okay if we come back in 10 minutes, and we'll get started at 10:30 to go through the rest of our agenda. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Well, it's 10:30. Welcome back, everyone. As we're collecting a few people, I guess we'll give them a couple more minutes, but just as we're collecting and getting ready again. And also, I want to say special thanks to Amanda for running the slides for this, since with one screen at home, it would be near impossible. So thank you so much, Amanda. You're doing awesome.
You're so welcome. Thank you. You are welcome. This is one of the fun parts of supporting, is getting to be in control.
Hey, Amanda, one question. Is that meeting next week that I have on my calendar, is that for the Check and Connect mentors?
Oh gosh, let me look at my calendar so I'm on the same page with you. So the 13th is the YIC webinar, and yes, primarily for our mentors, but everybody's welcome to participate in the webinars. When we do the topics, we just try to get something that will help anybody working with YIC kiddos. So that's from 9 to 11. And then let's see, was there another one you were thinking?
No, that was it, because
Okay.
I have this one on my calendar, and Julia and Kyle had to remind me it was today, so.
Fair enough. Too many meetings. It's that time of year, you know, when we're all getting back to school.
Yeah.
It's just meeting after meeting after meeting. So
Which is a total good reminder for me. If there's a meeting I'm supposed to be in with any of you, or you've invited Nick before, please invite me. I'm trying to get all the meetings into my calendar, but just like Stephen was saying, there's a lot of meetings, and I don't want to miss something important. So please invite us. Amanda probably already has them on our calendar, but just in case, send me the invite. And if you're in a meeting and you're like, wow, Kyle should be here right now, message me then and I'll jump in, because there's a chance I might not have it on my calendar. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming back. Trina, are you here with us? Are you back?
I am.
Okay, the next section, we'll turn over to Trina.
Okay, thanks everybody. Welcome back. This is the fun part. I get to talk to you about educational outcome data. We have within DHS a management information center that is able to collect data. We have an MOU with Usbe, and I meet with them a couple times a year and request data, and they give me the data, and I create tables and try to present it in a way that's useful and easy to understand. So today we will be covering match rate, race and ethnicity, the graduation rates, mobility, average yearly school changes, GPA, special education rates, and chronic absenteeism. So this report addresses educational outcomes for DHS clients and the Utah population of students. USB data is matched with DHS clients and updated twice each year, once after the school year is completed and then the following winter. And the data is collected by matching education records. So the total counts of records submitted for matching with USB data are listed in the following table and indicate the counts of matching records. So clients are then filtered to present data on students ages 6 through 18. So this match rate is really dependent on you as YIC administrators and your staff making sure that students in your YIC programs are marked as YIC within your systems so that we can get the most accurate data. So next slide. So as you can see, I have it broken up by DCFS and JJS. In 2020, DCFS had a 92.2% match rate, which is really great. And then JJS had an 85.7 match rate. Next slide. So this slide represents race and ethnicity comparisons between DHS and USB. As you will note, in 2020, Black students represented 1.4% of the general population, and then overrepresented in both JJS and DCFS at 5.57% and 5.29%. The same is true for American Indians, who represented 1% of the general population and 5.19% in JJS and 4.16% for DCFS. Next slide. So the next slide compares Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. The reason is because direct comparisons between DHS and USBE are challenging because information for race and ethnicity are gathered differently between DHS and USBE data systems. So USBE considers Hispanic ethnicity as a race category. So this results in shifting a significant percentage of USBE students from the white category to the Hispanic category. So that's just the reason for showing the data differently here. So you'll see for 2020, USBE had 17.6% Hispanic students, and then slightly overrepresented in JJS and DCFS at 22.6% and 23.65%. And next slide. So this just shows the average of schools for mobile kids. Mobility is defined as students who change schools for reasons other than grade promotion. And they are considered mobile if they are enrolled in no single school for at least 160 days. So you can just note the difference of mobility. I tend to just look at the 2020 data, but I provided just a few years back. So USBE 1.76. So makes sense that DCFS students are more mobile than JJS students. And next slide. So this just looks at average GPA for 9th to 12th graders. You can see that they're pretty steady. USBE is at about a 3.03, JJS, and I'm just looking at the totals, 2.09, 2.10, and then DCFS slightly higher at 2.49 and 2.45. Next slide. So these are the graduation rates for 2019 and 2020, USBE at 88%, DCFS at 53%, and JJS at 55%. I was able to get the JJS data last minute. Julia had pointed out yesterday that I had left it out, so I snuck it in there. And okay, so the next slide is special education rates. So no surprise here. And just to note that the special education rates nationwide for youth in custody are in the 30s, 30 to 40%, just as a comparison. As you can see in 2020, 38% for DCFS, 29% for JGS, compared to 13% for the general population. And then the next slide is chronic absenteeism. This is information that is new this year that we hadn't collected before. And chronic absenteeism is defined as a student who was absent for more than 10% of days enrolled. So the student had to be enrolled for at least 1/4 of the year to be included in the calculation. So you can see here for 2020 that the general population had chronic absenteeism at a rate of 9.2%, compared to JJS at 33.5% and 22.8% for DCFS. And that is all of the data that I had to share today. I don't know if you had any questions. Obviously thinking about future considerations and how we can improve the educational outcomes for youth in custody is something that we are all striving for. Mentioned in the USBE YIC strategic plan and the goals, that's the bottom line, is making sure that we're improving educational outcomes for these youth, so they have the best opportunity to be successful adults. So thank you.
Hey, Trina.
I have a question, but I'm not sure this is where I ask it. Is this where I ask it, Trina?
You can.
Okay. And I left a message with Julia yesterday too. I'm just wondering if other RTCs are having this problem, but we were just made aware with one of our RTCs that they were applying for their a DHS facility. We have 2, and they were applying for relicensure. And they were told that they were cutting the licenses in half by the state, and were worried that they may have to go private now instead of do state. Are any of you having that concern? And it's interesting, it's happening in October after school started.
I have not heard that, except from another YIC director. So we actually have a meeting this afternoon with JJS administration. It's not particular to this, it's a standing meeting, but I'll bring up that question.
Okay, and it's not JJS that we're concerned about, it's
Oh, you're
DHS.
right.
Because we had that conversation. I think it was,
Yeah,
it was.
I've heard
Kyle
that a couple different places, right?
Yeah, and I just
Right.
wondered if it was anybody else was experiencing that, if they have RTCs.
Well, and I think it's important to note that DHS now carries all the contracts for, and I think it's shifting, but a couple of years ago they took, so any state contract was under DHS, no longer specific to JJS and no longer specific to DCFS. So a DHS contract can have both JJS and DCFS students. And so I think that is important to know. And so I think it could possibly be a JJS conversation, Kyle, but I think we also probably need to go to the Office of Quality and Design and see what's going on there, because this is the first, Arlene, that I'm hearing of that.
Okay, and it was kind of a shock to us too. And the thing is, these homes have been there and they've had a very good working relationship with the state office, and it's just so. And then my next question is, is there any way to tie these students to YIC if it is private and not state ran? Can they, I know that's been a long ongoing question. Sometimes we get students that have state ID numbers, but they've been out of state. They're at a private school. It's just kind of confusing. So I'm just wondering.
I think as long as they're in state's custody, you're fine. Whether it's a private run agency and they have a sole source agreement with DCFS or JJS, as long as they're in state's custody, we're okay. If they are in another state's custody, that's a bigger question, because then there's the talk of getting tuition from that other state to provide the services through your program. And so I think it's a bigger conversation, but if they're placed by the state, because oftentimes the state will place in private agencies because they don't have any other agency that can support the needs of that child.
Right. And
So
we have that with our boys' home, but with our girls' home, we had 3 homes and they did 1 private, and they're they pay with insurance and parents. And so they're, now the question is, if they don't get the state license, then they're thinking to do the next one. And I already have teachers in place, and, we've got contracts in place. I'm just like, oh. So, and Kyle assured me we're okay for this year, but next year we'd have to. But it's just, I just wondered if I'm the only one that's experiencing that, or if there are any other YIC directors that have heard anything about that. So.
The private market is definitely feeling the pangs of some serious reform in Utah, and you're seeing a lot more pursuit of out-of-state students.
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing that. To put it mildly, in Provo, but again, it will be super helpful, as Julia just perfectly articulated, that we just need to know what contracts are going to be in place going forward and adjust to whatever is going to come down. Because I do think there's going to be a lot of shifting, both from the state side, but also from the private provider side, just so that they can remain viable with how few students are in the system.
Thanks, Travis. I appreciate that.
Any other questions for Trina?
And we will be sharing this out. I think a couple of people have asked for the data, so we will make sure that you have access to this data.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next slide. And Amanda?
Yeah, Yes, so now it's my turn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. So my data is going to be much more brief than Trina's, as this is the first chance I've had to review the information shared by the mentors after one whole school year of constant monitoring. And what I'd like to start with is just the kudos to all your mentors and directors and coordinators that have helped work on the data. I can see improvements each quarter or term, however your school years fall in. And so it's just really nice. I just wanted to share out that I can see improvements and more understanding of what we're reporting. So here on your screen, you'll see that through the reports that were collected, there are still about 3 or 4 LEAs that I don't have fourth term end of school year data on. And so that's the counts I have just from what was reported. So the YIC mentors last year saw a little over 1,500 kids. And of those kids, there are the high risk categories there for academic, behavior, and connection. And what I noticed is even though there's a lot of kids that are high risk, we've got all these mentors out there doing the preventions with them. And it's been really fantastic to see what comes back on that, to not only see that the mentors are meeting with them weekly, which is what we consider the basic intervention, but they're also doing the more intensive interventions with them when necessary to problem solve or work on goal setting, and of course, engagement in school and community activities. But overall, we are still seeing kids need more of the intensive interventions. I did the math this morning. So we do see that there's 675 that primarily received the basic intervention of that weekly meeting. But at the end of last year, there were 851 who were receiving intensive interventions. So it's to me, it just proves that the mentors are needed and that the work they're doing is changing kids' lives. So again, kudos to your mentors. The other information I have to share with the group this morning is just some updates on the training schedule. Hopefully you've all seen a time or two the current school year training schedule for the Check and Connect mentor trainings. We're offering the initial training for new mentors, which is in person a 2-day or online a 3-day. And the next session for that one will be at Steve Schofield's district offices in Iron County School District on October 28th and 29th. And there's still room if anybody wants to register for that. And then we're also offering this year Utah refresher trainings. So it's something me and the other locally certified trainers have put together with feedback from some mentors who've been doing it for a while and have some experiences to share with us. We did our first online session last week. And it was fantastic. Zoom is never our preferred format, but the participants were champions and made it work. And by day 2, we were able to have a really good dialogue and share information and experiences and really grow together. So I'm looking forward to the next one being in person on November 19th. And that one does have additional room to register as well. And that's, like I said, just a 1-day refresher. So it's not for the new mentors. This would be for our experienced folks, and not just mentors. Anybody working with YIC kids that want to come in and learn the information that the mentors share and resources we use. So we also have the YIC webinars, and like the trainings, I'm hoping you've seen those invitations by now. I send them out monthly to the listserv and include the agenda. On the 13th, we'll be having Kun Win from the prevention team do a restorative practices overview and a deep dive on the first 2 elements. And then Scott Iyer from the Safe and Healthy Schools team will be talking to us about creating positive culture. The third update I have for everybody is the data templates. So in August, I sent out the weekly form, which is actually set up for the entire school year. And that's what your mentors are using weekly to collect the ABC data. And by the end of this week, I will be sending the mentor caseload summary, which is what your teams will be using to turn in data at the end of the first term or quarter. And then of course, at the end of each term and quarter. So it was short and sweet, and that's it for me. I will turn over time to Julia to round out Check and Connect for us.
Thanks, Amanda. And I have to say, I'm going to speak to monitoring here in a minute, but one of my favorite parts of my job this last year has been meeting with you guys, and specifically meeting with all of you, but I've really enjoyed meeting with our mentors and your mentors because I think they do awesome work. And with Amanda's connections at USBE and all of her work that's happening, there's a lot of momentum and there's a lot of excitement around Check and Connect. And so I think it's important for you to all know that there are people that are saying, hey, I want to provide this service to our American Indian folks, or I want to provide this service as part of gang prevention, or just part of other preventative type services to students outside of YIC. And so we have seen an increasing number of people coming from LEAs in different capacities, which is awesome, but also it might cause some challenges for you in your LEAs as maybe the infrastructure for Check and Connect is not quite there because they haven't received all of the training and all of the information to create that in those other programs. So I just wanted to A, say we're excited about that, but B, just to be cautious of that in your own LEAs as you navigate assigning mentors and seeing if there are other programs using the Check and Connect program. We at USBE are meeting with our prevention folks to see if we can share the responsibilities of expanding Check and Connect throughout LEAs and create a better infrastructure for folks outside of YIC. So just know that it's exciting. People like it. They want to do it. And we are encouraging of that. We just want to make sure people are prepared to take that on in their various roles. So that I think is important to note. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, because Check and Connect is highly sought after by many, last spring we talked about expanding Check and Connect to JJS if you have the capacity. So Nick spelled out for you all of the various JJS services that are provided, that if you have the capacity, you can serve those students. What we found came after that was some panic from LEA saying, we don't have the capacity to serve this number of students, and it seems like this is now the expectation. I want you to know it's not the expectation to expand Check and Connect to all JJS youth that are served. But look at what your capacity is to expand that to JJS and additional DCFS kids that have some involvement in those systems. What we are encouraging, we had to really take a step back and talk to JJS about this, is saying we cannot provide Check and Connect to every student that you serve at any level. But where we found that Check and Connect would really be beneficial is for those youth that are being ordered into at-home detention. So many youth go into detention for certain charges, but in the last year, they've really promoted at-home detention where youth are going home for a period of time and needing to do their school from home and whatnot. So what we have talked to JJS about and what we mentioned last spring is that if you have the capacity in your LEA to serve those students, we are encouraging that. What that would look like for you is students would come, it would be assigned at home detention. Someone from Donovan's team at JJS would reach out to you and say, do you have the ability to serve this student? If you do, the expectation or what you possibly could do is meet with that student while they're at home and then continue to track them as they go back to their LEA for 6 months, 30 days, 90 days, whatever meets the needs of that youth. It just will help them as they're at home, as well as transitioning back into their schools, helping make sure that that team at the school is really there to support those youth. I think that will also help in some of those cases where the youth are going to at-home detention, they're coming back into your facilities and you really don't have a way to share information about maybe what risks are involved. It can help with some of that conversation as well. So I do think that it's beneficial if you have the capacity to do that. What I'm understanding is that there's about 50 students currently that are at home detention, but really only half of that might need this service that Donovan's team have reached out for help in. And it really only affects that Wasatch Front primarily, so Ogden to Provo, but there might be other judicial districts that use at-home detention in your various LEAs, as that catches on. So I just wanted to make sure to put that plug out there. I'm in the process of creating a protocol or something for information sharing that will work with JJS and us it's on my to-do list. I haven't gotten that far, but I would just encourage you to talk to JJS and see if that is something you're available to do if you have capacity and you understand kind of where your mentors are at this point. If you feel like I have a part-time mentor, I'd like to provide this service, that might be a place where you ask for some supplemental funding to maybe add some hours to their schedule. So one more point that I need to make. Oh, I'm sorry. One more quick point. The tricky part about these kids that are in at-home detention is that they are not in the state's custody. So they're placed in home, they're still in their parents' custody. Whereas if they go to a detention facility, they would be temporary custody, which allows case managers to communicate with schools and provide information sharing. And so one of the protocol pieces that I'm talking about is we just need to make sure parents are aware that you'll be reaching out to their students. So that's kind of where it can get a little tricky with confidentiality. Chancey, were you going to ask a question? I'm sorry I cut you off.
That's fine. You're talking specifically about the students that are in home, but what about those that are in a facility? Is there a protocol for that? One of our mentors had mentioned that she heard from another mentor in another district that they are meeting, and our current procedures we haven't had any of our mentors meet with them. So I'm just wondering if that is in their scope, or is that something that I'm just wondering what others are doing, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I would open that up to you, directors, to let us know what you're doing as far as any mentoring in like RTCs or detention centers or things along those lines.
Julia?
Yeah.
If I can speak to that, that was one of the questions I kind of threw out there. I don't know if this is something Chancey's alluding to, but at DSI, here in Salt Lake, we have predominantly a probation population. And that's been kind of the area that's really weird. You're right, it's under that temporary guardianship, just like home detention is. But I think there's a little, I don't know, there needs to be probably some clarity on roles and stuff like that, because right now the courts have kind of moved to working from home. And so this shifts a large burden to Check and Connect mentors to cover that. And I think it has some confusion. It has definitely the privacy part that you spoke to. And what I always just worry about is it's not necessarily serving kids. I'm all for it, but sometimes the old proverbial Pandora's box, there's no kid in any even traditional setting that wouldn't want the benefits of a mentoring model. But I think we have to define those parameters and determine how we're going to serve them. So in our setting, Chancey, we've had a mentor. We have DSI/Gemstone. And Gemstone definitely falls more in line with kind of what we're doing. It's not always that probation population, but we have this high probation population that our mentors are starting to work with. And in Granite School District, when the kids leave DSI, they're going predominantly to Granite School sites, not exclusively, but predominantly where we have mentors. And our caseloads are extremely high. And then we have to take a look at, do we need to add more mentors and stuff like that? So I think we got to be really careful how we go. I'm not advocating against it, but I think it's an important conversation to have with our partners in the court, because I think that because they're taking an approach of working from home doesn't necessarily mean that we take on that additional responsibility to provide that data, that face-to-face supervision. Maybe we do, but I think it would definitely benefit from further conversation about roles and goals and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Jason, because I do want to make a protocol or see kind of how to make this official. At this point, if you don't have the capacity, you say at this time I can't serve them. If you do, I think, Travis has had some flexibility with some mentors this year that he's been able to approach that population specifically, but it just depends on your ability. I think Kyle's group reached out to some other LEAs and they said, we just can't at this time, which is also fine. But as we move forward, Jason, I think you make good points that we need to include those court folks, as well as those of you that this would affect, to make sure that that is something that is clear and that rules are defined. And and that we understand moving forward. At this point, it's really optional if you have the capacity.
It is a little tricky though too, because people talk, and if someone is getting benefit from something good, of course they want it. And so it's hard from an equity standpoint to say, well, we're going to offer it to this group here, but we're not going to offer it to this group there. So I think it's a little slippery. I'm all reaching out, and in our settings, you know, sometimes we serve non-YIC youth in conjunction with YIC youth, and it's just always that, I don't know if the other director facing it, I face it as an equity issue, and I want to make sure that we're just being really clear. And even across the state, our kids are highly mobile, and they're looking at places, and I like what they're doing over this area, I want to do that. And so it's really important for us as directors to have those conversations, I think, even before going to some of the partners and having those secondary conversations.
Okay. I'm hearing you. And Chancey, speak back to in facilities, we don't, and maybe other directors can chime in. I know DSI is kind of a unique situation, but and correct me if I'm wrong, those of you that are doing this, but when we have students that are in facilities, we don't necessarily always have check and connect mentors in those programs. This is really primarily serving those students that are on mainstream schools. And it's just a supplemental service that we're providing to those youth. So those kids that are in facilities, I know that there are other avenues of mentor type programs. So our ETCAs, for example, through the N&D grant, they provide some transition services for those youth that are going from residential care back to mainstream or back into the community. And so there are some other resources like that throughout the state, but primarily Check and Connect is for those that are in mainstream type settings. And something, you know, we always encourage too is as youth are going from secure care, they might be working with an ETCA there. We would love to have a great transition from that ETCA to a Check and Connect mentor if that fits the needs of that youth. So there can be some creativity there too. Tell me if you understand differently, directors.
That sounds like what we're doing in our district. I think you hit it on the head.
Okay. And you know, every LEA is unique, and that's what I'm learning too, right? And you all face your own challenges and your own, right? RTCs are different. Directors of those programs are different. Contracts look different. And so sometimes we just have to look at what is your LEA's practice, what fits within your model, because one size is not going to fit all across the state. And we recognize that. As you see Check and Connect expanding, as you hear from other maybe programs in your districts that are using Check and Connect, if you need us to come in and help guide or create some questions around what infrastructure can support so that we're not duplicating services to students in your LEAs, please reach out to Amanda, Kyle, or I will always go back to Amanda when it comes to Check and Connect, but we will facilitate those conversations. We've been able to do that with a few LEAs. And I think it's been helpful just to kind of give them a basic understanding of what happens in those trainings and what their mentors will be excited to do once they come out of that training. All right, any questions about Check and Connect specifically for Amanda or Kyle or I, for me? Kudos to you for all the work that you do. We're grateful for that. And being a DCFS employee prior to this position, I loved my Check and Connect mentors, and I relied on them so heavily. And it's a service that I think that they need. And I would love, like Jason said, we would love to serve all students. We can't necessarily, but it is one that I'm passionate about and excited about because I have some great experiences from Check and Connect. So we're going to move into monitoring. Is that right? And so I'm going to just kind of give you 2021 in review and anticipations of 21, 22. This will be pretty simple and straightforward. As we continue to perfect our monitoring process, hopefully there will be more data and help as we move along. But this last year, being in our homes, Nick and I were able to do quite a few reviews, and it was the most helpful thing for me in my position, especially new last year to this position, to really get to know you and your programs. And unfortunately, those that I didn't monitor, I really didn't get to interact with much. And so this year I'm looking forward to meeting with a lot of you. So Amanda, if you'll go to the next slide. This shows really where we were at. So we did 15 reviews. 2 were able to be on site. So we were able to hit 1 in the beginning and 1 at the end of the school year, but everything in between had to be virtual because they wouldn't let us out of our homes. And as you see here, Nick is in his basement with a scarf as we're doing one of these monitoring. So this is what it looked like for us. And I felt like I needed to do an ode to Nick. And so remind you all that this is a face we miss and that we, anyway. So if you have questions regarding Nick or anything later, you're welcome to stay on the line and we can chat. But this is what we looked like last year in your programs because we couldn't come in person, but it was still very, very helpful for our process. These are all of the LEAs on this slide that you can see that we reviewed last year. And, you know, there were some great moments and some lessons learned along the way. You can move on, Amanda. These are the outcomes from our goals. So those of you that are not familiar with our monitoring process, we have a tool that we use that has 6 goals, and then each goal has a bunch of indicators underneath that. And so of the 6 goals, we look at areas of strength and areas of need, and then we provide feedback to the LEAs regarding those areas. And so what I thought was interesting looking at strengths and needs is that 2, 3, and 4 are kind of those we were either doing really great at it or there were areas that we needed to prove on that. And that would be the establishing a strategic plan for how you do business in your various LEAs, creating your own vision statements and your own mission statements, having an idea of how to use Check and Connect within your program, along those lines, and really helping anybody that's looking in understand how youth in custody programs work within your LEA. And we saw some really great ones, and there are some that are great in practice, but not necessarily written. And so just a suggestion would be continue to do what you're doing, but let's write it down so that your predecessors can continue to do the good work you're doing, or those looking in can understand how you go about doing business. Another area that was a great strength and also a need was establishing community relationships, specifically through your local interagency councils, and then the meetings that are associated with that. There is some really, really fantastic community partnership going on throughout the state, and that was really great to see. Great to see how many of you bring in all of the various partners in your communities to really serve these youth in custody and make sure that you're all on the same page. There were other areas that might be smaller or just needed to, you know, add a person or 2 to that committee to round it out as a whole. But really great work there. And also, of course, room for improvement. And then 4, I was a little bit surprised by goal 4 that it was so big in student learning, because it seemed like everything, like your programs are going really well. I think the area that there needed to be some strength in, and I think it's COVID related specifically, was all of those extras that you would do normally, right? All of those CTE type extras that you weren't able to do this last year because of restrictions. And so I don't really think that there's anywhere in learning that is really highlighted in my brain or based on our reviews that you need to do other than bring those things back, right? Once you're able to, a lot of those things that you have done historically, bring them back to the table. And it's amazing the creativity so many of you have had in teaching these youth. teachers that are, shifting their schedules and traveling every single day to various locations to teach one subject is really impressive to me. Or, some of these schools that you've been able to create as close to a normal school experience as possible. It's been pretty awesome to see. A few things to note. On 5, we didn't really score that one too much because we weren't able to see your programs. But from what we can tell, you're creating really great, safe learning environments. And part of that, I think, is on the responsibility of JJS, that we will report to them if there's anything concerning regarding some of their facilities that you're able to work within. And then student records as well. It was really difficult to do a review of records virtually. And so we will enhance that this following year. Do you have any questions about these specific graphs or areas of strength or need that we were able to see this last year? Okay, let's move along, and then there will be time for questions here too soon. A couple of things I just want to, those of you, so here are the schools on this slide of the schools that we will be reviewing this year. So we did 15 last year. We learned that was way more than we could handle on our end. We were able to do that many, I think, because it was virtual, but now we are wanting to meet in person, and so we needed to cut that down significantly. We use, and last year I went over the risk assessment with you, but we use a risk assessment to determine who we are reviewing each year. One of the high risk indicators is if you haven't been reviewed within the last 3 years. So about every 3 years, you will all come up to be reviewed, but you may be reviewed more frequently depending on, if you've had a change in director, or I feel like those are the main areas that kind of trigger a review outside of just kind of the normal process. But every 3 years, you will show up as high risk. It's not really a risk assessment, but that's what they call it, to do a review. And so these are the folks that we have identified this year to review, and those that we will be coming out in this month and next month. I've already notified you verbally, and you'll be getting letters from me soon, and then we'll be reaching out to the rest of you to look at tentative dates. So the idea of these reviews is, prior to the review, we will send you a letter about a month in advance that asks for documentation. And so we'd ask that you return that documentation at your earliest convenience so that we can review it before we come out to your program. And then once we come to your program, we will meet with you. I think it was about 2 hours we spent with each director this last year, which was a great amount of time to really get a feel for how things are going. And then we also interviewed check and connect mentors, teachers, students, ETCAs, counselors, whoever you feel is important for us to really understand your program. And then we typed up a report, and we just sent those to you. So I apologize for the late response in those reports this year. We hope to get those out in a quicker fashion. But it's a pretty simple process. So those that are being reviewed this year, if you want to talk to someone that was reviewed last year and get a sense for what the experience was like, I hope that you will learn that it's a very relaxed, easy process. It's Kyle, Amanda, and I that will come out, and it's formal because we need it to be formal, but it's also relaxed because it's just us. I'm sorry.
There was a question in the comment. They're wondering if you could share the tool so that they can be proactive about meeting the goals.
Yes, we will send an email out to you so let's add that, Amanda, to our send documents. So we will send that along with a follow-up email to this meeting. So good question, or good request.
So I got an email, and then it yesterday, and then it was changed. So I don't know.
It was my mistake. Yep, it was my mistake.
My date is not. Hopefully it's not November 3rd.
No.
Okay, so then I can talk to the three of you about. Okay.
Yes. about the right date, but that was incorrect. That was my.
When I'm up and what I might need some help with.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, those of you that have heard from Kyle's just been reaching out to get to know you. Just really simple. Hi, this is who we are. Let us know how we can help you type conversations, which is pretty informal and not really part of the mentoring process, monitoring process, but it's been a good opportunity to chat with you. So we will send that out. And that's what the process looks like. This last year, we partnered with our UPIPS team. Amanda, I don't know what UPIP stands for. I probably should have looked it up, but it's essentially our team here at USBE that monitors special education throughout your LEAs. So a lot of you have experienced those special education monitoring visits. That's usually coordinated through your special education director. And oftentimes they pull you into that because we, like Trina's charts and data show today, we have a high percentage of youth that have special education needs. Last year, we thought, let's try to help LEAs by doing them like a one and done. Like we're coming out, we're doing UPIPs, we're doing YIC all at the same time. We learned that while that was okay, it wasn't great. There are two very specific purposes and agendas, and it was just a little overwhelming and complicated. It was helpful for us to be able to see what UPIPS was doing and for UPIPS to get a sense for what YIC was doing. But we determined this year that we will not be continuing UPIPS and YIC together. I'm getting some thumbs up. So some of you went through those kind of growing pains as we try that. However, we will be, I will be at this point, there's only 2 special education reviews this year that USBE is doing to any of our schools that have youth in custody programs. And I will be participating with them in their UPIPS review, but it will not be a YIC review. That being said, since I will be in your LEA, I would love to come by and see you, especially if you're part of that. And so you might hear from me saying, hey, I'm going to be around. Can I stop in and say hello? So we're still going to be part of it so we can share information, but we are not going to do that together. So I apologize that you might have multiple reviews a year, but I think what we're also going to try to do is not review the same LEA the same year that UPIPS, just so that you are not inundated with reviews. Dan, is that a hand or is a scratch? Okay, all right. Questions about that? I got good feedback. Okay. Another piece that we will be adding to our review this year. So Nick did a kind of an informal fiscal review of most of your LEAs that we visited last year. And all he did was he contacted one of our financial monitors and had them request a general ledger and then did a very informal review of funding and then just highlighted anything that we had questions about. We will continue to do that. And so in the letter that I send you, we are requesting you to send us a general ledger, but that will be very just informal and just a quick review, and we will only highlight any questions that we might have. I have a photo of Clint Hoke here because there is a new monitoring team at USBE. And so Clint has been tasked to various programs at USBE that he will be doing fiscal monitoring throughout the state. And one of his assignments is youth in custody. So he has his own risk assessment that he will be doing that is specific to finances. And then he will be reaching out to your business, your BAs, and you to be doing his own fiscal monitoring. I don't know at this point who he will be monitoring this year. And I think they're still learning that process, but I just wanted you to understand that this is a new process that his team is developing currently. And I wanted you to see his face, and he might even come along with us to some of our monitoring visits just so that he better understands youth in custody programs as he goes through his fiscal monitoring process. I don't have a lot of answers to any questions you might have, but if you do have questions and I don't have an answer, I'm happy to take it back to his team. Okay, as we go through that, we will be in touch. I'm sure there will be communication and we'll just walk through that together. Again, I'm not really sure what that looks like, but again, I think Clint's a pretty easygoing guy, and it shouldn't be painful. All right, I think that is all I have as far as monitoring. Any questions, concerns, comments? Regarding monitoring. All right, it is 11:20, and I'm really happy about that because this gives us plenty of time to answer questions. And Kyle, I'll let you take back facilitation, and we can open it up to everyone.
Sure. We just wanted to have a little time at the end where if you have any questions about anything we talked about today or anything additional, just wanted to open it up.
This is Carol. I'll jump in. I just maybe have a question or idea. I don't know how to put it. What we've kind of run into, our program is pretty new, just about a year and a half old, coming on 2 years in January, is when, as you all know, we're based in a traditional high school. We don't have any self-contained, so all of the women that we serve go right into our regular classes at Marine High School. So with that said, come under that standard LEA diploma. What we run into, particularly getting young men, well, that's where they're transitioning out of, because that's our RTC structure, is a whole lot of credits. But when we start evaluating them for the requirements in our LEA graduation, there's a lot of credits that are obtained that are never needed, if that makes sense. Like some young men might have 4 or 5 life science classes or the same English class multiple times. So it's a little defeating for them when we say, you know what, yeah, you have like 10 science credits, but guess what? It's the wrong science credits. You've got to take more classes. Is there ever, I'd like to hear people's discussions, is there ever maybe an opportunity to say this could come under like a USBE issued diploma or something that we can set a standard? Because I know each school district has different numbers of credits required for graduation. So as we get these youth that are very transitional in and out of multiple school district facilities, RTC, it just is tricky to say, you know what, yeah, you're a senior and we probably have you for 60 to 90 days, but it's super hard when they have a whole lot of credits that don't count towards graduation. I'd just like to hear what the group thinks.
Carol, I don't know if you saw Travis's comment in the chat.
Yeah, I can just read that. An LEA may modify graduation requirements for an individual student to achieve an appropriate route to student success if the modification A is consistent with I, the student's IEP or IISEOP-plan for college and career readiness. B is maintained in a file. C includes a parent's signature, and D maintains the integrity and rigor expected for high school graduation as determined by the board.
So Travis, when you say board, are you saying our board or USBE board? Because currently we have
elementary, secondary school, general.
We have a 24-degree diploma or 27. But even when we get the young men in, the 24 is hard to get because they have so many of the same types of credits. So we would make that determination that we could do, and very few of our students are actually, what surprises me, are IEP students. It'd be a whole lot easier if they all came IEP.
Generally speaking, like Provo School District is kind of gotten into the weeds on this in the sense that we actually have forms and policy that even further delineates this opportunity for students. And so we just kind of dot our I's and cross our T's and can either repurpose credit or have it reevaluated in the graduation committee by policy to then determine how close they are to meeting the obligations after we've jumped through these additional hoops. That combined with some of the credit recovery options, the grade replacement options usually allow us to be pretty flexible about what's on paper already and what needs to be done.
Carol, I would just reiterate what Alice says. Whenever something comes in, we have a team evaluate, and as they're approaching graduation, well, along the way, we'll have conversations, but there is a latitude that's given, is what Travis has shared, and also the grade placement has some flexibility too. Plus, in our district, if you're doing yours with proficiency-based grading, we're starting to implement that in our district, which kids can show proficiency in a number of ways. It's not based on seat time and all those different things. So it's just evaluating, as we all do, case by case with each kid that comes in. But when you get those transcripts right away, making that part of your counselor or whomever you've designated as your team to go through that process.
We do have a set school counselor that we use, but Travis, if you could send me that policy, it'd be great, because I think that's what we're bumping up into. We don't have that policy in Murray, so we're trying to hold them to our standard graduation rate. So they have so many credits that never count. But yeah, I could definitely work towards something like that. Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's very helpful.
But Carol's question, Dr. Cook, our own specific school board, right? Our district school board has to sign off, not necessarily the.
Correct. So all credit and diploma awarding is facilitated and obligated by the LEA, the accredited school under the local educational agency. Correct. But the reference here in this rule is the state board of ed, but meaning like, hey, the board set out these standards for rigor, but as you know, each LEA applies them uniquely, right? That's why we have such ranging differences in graduation requirements and courses and credit requirements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, other questions?
So I'm going to bring up a question. I've talked to Kyle and Travis, Julie, a number of us have talked about it, and I just would like to get feedback from some other directors around the state. With the change in the law, with kids being older, possibly all the way up to age 25, it's for those of you who have facilities or are combining different populations. What type of, I guess the question I want to ask is, how are you addressing the service to the different populations? For example, in Decker Lake, we have kids that we're trying to deliver the K-2, not the K-12, mostly a high school core education, but we're getting more and more higher numbers of graduates, and we're doing that with the same resources. There's a lot of issues that we've talked about that have to do with how we're coded, but I'd be curious to find out from other places how you're serving these kids. I'll tell you from our end, in talking to my district leadership and others, I'm very uncomfortable with a practice that has just kind of more or less become the norm because of not really knowing what to do. I don't think it's anything done with malice, but when the graduates, when there's not sufficient facility staffing patterns, graduates are being placed in the back classrooms with kids. And I think that has some equity implications. And it's not something that is built for a really thorough model that best serves the needs of all kids. So I think this is new territory. It's a natural growth from the juvenile reform, but is anyone, from Travis, Travis and I have talked a lot about it, running into that and maybe what you guys have been bringing up in your conversations? Have you had any updates on anything that you've kind of seen in your area as we've talked?
No, I was just going to say it's not a unique issue. I know that a lot of that we're anywhere where we have a physical site for JDS, this is going to be an issue and a growing issue. I'm not sure currently, I know there are a handful of students that are over that, are around that 21-year-old mark. But even then, a discussion we will have with JJS is that it's at graduation mark, not necessarily the 18 to 21-year-olds. It's actually the kids who have graduated that become, that range, whether they're seeing it that way or not. Because I also know there were some conversations from JJS saying, well, we won't have that many kids in that range, in that area until, a couple, 3 years from now, except it's every graduate. It's not just a date, it's not that they turned 18, it's that the kids have graduated from school.
Sure, I agree with you. And the challenge on our end is we have teachers that aren't, collegiate professors. And so we need to, be able to plan through our funding for the resources to support them. Same conversation the site has their policy with staffing patterns. It's not our policy, but in experiences in the past had classrooms shut down because of lack of staffing. And that creates some problems logistically on our end for how we can serve these kids, because we're called to be paired with an infrastructure. We don't, if a staff member doesn't show up, we don't get to say, sorry, there's nothing for the day. And again, my concern is these kids are being moved into classrooms to cover supervision patterns at the facility. And in the JJS realm and the facility realm, that's an understandable approach. But in the educational realm, we're called to serve these educationally. That's a supervision issue, as I see, that is an issue with the facility and not so much with our classrooms to take on that group of kids. I think it leads to disruption. I don't think it's fair to those kids. I mean, if any of us can imagine if we were called to go back to school and sit in classrooms after we graduated and endure a day, that's not fair to them. And it's not fair to the teachers to have to figure out something to do with them. They're not prepared for that. There's union agreements that can be called into question. So it's not meant, my comments are meant to be negative or vindictive or anything like that, but I think it's a real issue. And I think it's something that isn't like wait a few years and see what transpires. I think we need to have these conversations now and figure out what our role and scope is so that we prepare as directors to serve the kids the way they need to be served.
This would be a great topic for our new break-free cohort group to resolve.
It would, and again, I don't know that this serves everyone, but I thought, I mean, this is affecting everyone, but it is something that's emerging. And I know that a lot of us have had conversations about trying to be proactive and facing the challenges that are coming our way. So that was my intent of bringing it up. If anyone is starting to run into that, possibly share with us what you're doing or what things you've been obstructed by so that we can figure out, what things we can do with what we have now, but also prepare in our future grants coming, because we're always doing our grants. For those of us that are hiring teachers and all that, we do it in the spring, and we usually do it before our districts are determining their surplus and their FTE and all that. So we're kind of taking a stab in the dark. And I know for me, I have quite a large number of teachers that are obligated to the professional agreement through unions and stuff that it's not advantageous to say that they have a vision and come back a couple months later and say they're not. And it's just that it's an issue about the timing of everything. It's the reality that we're in. But I'm trying to identify those variables and respond to them as proactively as possible. Thanks, guys.
And just to support Jason's point, maybe Trina, the next time the UCC YIC meets, if something like this can get on the agenda and have some representation possibly from the sites that would be affected by this. So Jason and I, Ed, Steve Schofield, granted, they always seem to find a way down there in Cedar to make it all work, but those of us that could come and speak to this might not be a bad idea.
Yep, that's a great idea. We'll talk about future meetings and getting you on the agenda.
Awesome. I also appreciate, and I've heard it a couple different places where, you know, if a capacity in a living center in one of the secure facilities is, say, 10, and, you know, we're conceptualizing that as being 10 kids who will be in school, and then they start to fill up and it's really 5 kids who are graduates and 5 who are not in school. Those are things that we need to share with our JJS partners and talk about how, you know, we're going to deal with that too. Because if a kid's there for 8 years, he's going to be in the population for a long time, and that is going to continually be somebody who has taken a bed in that facility. So that population will rise, because those kids currently, you know, 3 to 6 month guidelines for the majority of them, not all of them, because there are serious charges that keep them longer. But, you know, in that 3 to 6 month window, that's a pretty quick turnaround. But when a youth is there, you know, they're 16 now and they're going to be there till they're 25. That's a 9-year period of time they're holding a bed in one of those sections, reaching capacity. So I know that they're thinking about that too. I just don't know that they're thinking about how to strategize with this. So we'll have further discussions with our JJS partners on that.
Thanks, Kyle.
I know them. We'll figure it out, or we'll have some good discussions. All right, what else is on people's minds? What else do you want to share? This could be comments too. Doesn't have to be questions. Well, anybody want to put something in the chat? If you don't want to speak up, we'll just take a minute and see if there's any other items, thoughts. And if not, then we'll end 23 minutes early, give you back 23 minutes to do some of your other work, since I know we're all super busy.
Our USBE team will hang out around a little while. So if there is anything you just needed to address specifically with us, you're welcome to hang out. We'll just hang out until everyone's gone. Thank you. It was really great to see you all.
It was wonderful to hear from all of you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting you in person.